breaking news now on 13 on your side.
It is 9:30. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tanner Holbrook, live here from the WZZM 13 on your side studios, giving you the latest information in this plane crash in Washington, D.C. As we know, at this point, it is a recovery effort. So let us get you some video from the recovery efforts from overnight. This all occurred when a regional jet that was inbound to DCA, which is Reagan Airport, from Wichita, Kansas, collided with a military helicopter. We know that this helicopter was on a training flight while the plane was approaching the runway. So right now what you're looking at is some video from overnight. You can see that the recovery effort at that point in the night, which was a search and rescue operation at that point, was a very busy scene. There were more than 300 first responders at this scene trying to search for any survivors. At this point, we do know there are no survivors, or at least that is what officials believe to be the case at this point. So here is the video courtesy of EarthCam of what happened. We have circled the moment of impact, but we are deciding not to play it because we do know that likely more than 60, approaching 70 now, people are dead in this unfortunate crash. So as for that crash, we do know that there were 28 bodies recovered from the river. The plane was found upside down in 3 sections in waist-deep water. We also know helicopter wreckage was found as well. We should mention that this again started when that plane was approaching DCA, Reagan Airport. And we do have a map of the crash as well. So whenever we can take that, let's pull that up. And that will be helpful to paint the picture. But the plane was on final approach, getting ready to go into Reagan Airport, which you can see there. And then there was that Black Hawk helicopter. It was flying south, collided with the plane at around 8:47 last night. Again, at this point, officials do not believe that there are survivors. They have been in the waters searching for the basically all morning, overnight from when this happened to early this morning. Right now, we know 28 bodies have been recovered from the river. And the plane was again found upside down in 3 sections in waist-deep water. We should mention, though, DCA, Reagan Airport, is set to reopen at 11 this morning. Despite the reopening of the airport, we do know the Grand Rapids flight, which was supposed to take off toward DCA around 4 this afternoon, has been canceled. The return flight that was supposed to come before that takeoff, that flight that was supposed to take off, is also canceled. So it's safe to say right now, any Grand Rapids flights going to DCA today are canceled. We should also mention that this was a very clear night. The circumstances that we know about this flight is it was a clear night, and that's according to transportation officials. We should also mention that city officials in Wichita, Kansas, where this flight originated from, the city officials there have been briefed. At this point, we know that they will start to notify families and give them the latest information that they can, and as soon as they can. But at this point, they're still waiting on confirmation still for many details. Let's put some video back up on the screen of the recovery efforts as I narrate what kind of happened. So here's what we know about the regional jet that this was. This was a PSA Airlines flight, which, if you don't know, PSA Airlines is a airline that is a subsidiary of American Airlines. So American owns this regional airline carrier. This was a CRJ 700, so a Canadian regional jet. It is a small plane, so you know those planes where you get in there, you might have to duck your head a little bit when you're walking into the aircraft. That is what type of plane this was. There were 64 people on the plane, 60 passengers. We also know that there were 4 crew members. What you're seeing on your screen right here is something from our sister station, WUSA in Washington, D.C. That schematic that you're seeing, there are 3 different ones. There are a couple of different configurations that come in this plane. At this point, we don't know what configuration this plane was in, but you can see that mainly it is a 2x2 or a 2-seat on each side of the airplane type of situation there when it comes to the schematic and the layout of the seats of this aircraft. So again, 60 people were on that plane. There were 4 crew members on the plane as well. At this point, it is not believed that there are survivors. We also know that there were 3 people, 3 soldiers on this helicopter, which was a Black Hawk helicopter on a training mission. And it was on the training mission when it collided. So here's what we know about the victims on the plane. Again, not much is confirmed about who was on this plane. We know some of the passengers, however, were members of the U.S. skate team community. Now, when they say community, that raises a few questions. Were they actually on Team USA's skating team? Or were they in the U.S. skating program, which is a little bit different. But we do know that there were skaters or members of their skating community, along with coaches and family members with the U.S. figure skating team. Those skaters, however, we do know that they were coming back from some sort of camp that happens right after the U.S. figure skating championships there in Wichita, Kansas. If you're familiar with the last few days, you know that those championships were being held there in Wichita, Kansas. Something that we also do know is that there were 2 Russian figure skaters on board the plane as well. At this point, we don't know the identities confirmed of who those people were. Russian state media confirms that these were 2 figure skaters from Russia. There were some earlier reports this morning that these were 2 well-known figure skaters, perhaps who rose to fame in the 90s. At this point, the United States has not confirmed this. At 9:36, we want to give you the latest information about this plane crash, what we know. We're putting all of this in this stream for you so you can see what confirmed information there is out there. We noticed this morning when we were scrolling through our feeds, there's just a lot of reporting. And so we're hoping this stream makes it a little bit easier for you to digest and make sense of what's going on. So to give us a little bit of insight, ABC News has, they've done an interview with a pilot, John Nance. He's also a correspondent. He kind of gives us a little bit of insight as to what the helicopter was doing at the time. Again, we mentioned this was a training exercise that the helicopter was engaged in. He explains why helicopters like that go through those training missions and what the plane or what could have been happening to that plane while this whole thing was going on. Go ahead and take a listen.
When we call it a training flight, too, it doesn't mean that they're 2 raw recruits or 1 instructor and somebody who doesn't have much experience. It could be 2 very experienced pilots together and just logging time. And that goes towards currency, and currency is very important. It could also be a student and an instructor, but they are in an environment in which they've already had a tremendous amount of exposure to the different routes for the helicopters and the procedures and the radio calls. So it's not really that important to know at this point in time whether or not the training flight was a raw flight, in other words, an instructor really giving instruction to a student, or whether it was something else. The main thing is they all know what to do. They all know the corridors. How in the world did this particular corridor get breached?
And John, this plane was so close to the runway, it was almost safely on the ground. Talk us through what would have been going on that plane as they approached the runway, and how did the plane's collision avoidance system fail so spectacularly here?
Well, for one thing, I think the collision avoidance system probably is not on the Black Hawk helicopter, although I'm not certain of that. Military craft do not necessarily carry that. Secondly, if this was a incursion at a 90-degree angle and suddenly the GPS, collision avoidance system wouldn't necessarily cork off in the commercial cockpit. Thirdly, at 200 to 300 feet, you're concentrating on getting to the point of pulling the power back, raising the nose, and landing. You're not thinking of anything else, and you're not thinking of an incursion of another aircraft of any sort getting in front of you. So all of these augur for the situation that the pilots were literally hit out of the blue, so to speak, and had no idea, no opportunity to correct.
So that just gives you the idea of the situation of what could have happened in this incident. That was John Nance, who is a pilot and also an ABC correspondent. Let's talk more about the search and rescue effort that happened overnight. Again, this has now shifted to a recovery mission as we are fearing that the 60-plus people on the plane, as well as the 3 individuals on the helicopter, were killed in this situation. It's a part of the search and rescue efforts that you're looking at right now. As you can see overnight, it was a large rescue effort. I've been hearing from folks who live in that area. I have one friend that lives in that area who says that they were hearing sirens all night. Of course, you can imagine this is a full-scale response, as we know that about 300 people, first responders rather, were searching the waters in the Potomac, which, by the way, we have had 36-degree Fahrenheit temperatures in the Potomac for the search and rescue efforts. And of course, now we are more than 12 hours since this situation happened. I believe we have a live picture of the scene right now. Again, we can tell you that the search and rescue efforts, or the response, has significantly died down. You can see that compared to the video that we were just looking at, has shrunk in size. I'm talking more so the recovery response there. You can see that there are 2 large boats circling that area where there appears to be some wreckage and perhaps some responders there looking in that wreckage. Again, 64 people dead on the plane, presumed at this point. 3 people on the helicopter presumed dead as well. We can see that as daylight has appeared here, that we have the response has toned down significantly, which is interesting because, you know, seeing as we have no longer a search and rescue effort here, it's now a recovery effort, the focus shifts to recovering any bodies that might be in the water still. Right now we know 28 bodies have been recovered from the river. Again, this plane was found in 3 sections and upside down, so that could speak to the force in which, and we just lost that shot there, so we will work to get that back for you. But the way the plane was found could speak to the angle in which this crash happened, and as well as how the plane fell into the river too. And at some point, some of these plane pieces were found in waist-deep water. So you're talking about 3 sections of this plane in waist-deep water. We also know helicopter wreckage was found as well. We should mention DCA, better known as Reagan Airport, or Ronald Reagan National Airport, is set to reopen here in about an hour and 20 minutes. The tarmac and the airfield there has been closed since last night. Let's go to some more information right now. I know that we have been learning who the victims are in this. Of course, we know that U.S. figure skaters as well as some coaches are among the victims here. The skaters and coaches were returning from the National Development Camp, which follows the figure skating championships there. Russian state media is confirming, though, that 2 figure skaters were on board that plane from Russia. And we do know that these could have been people that were well known for figure skating in the 90s. Okay, I'm getting some new information now. 6 of these skaters were from a skating club in Boston. That is straight from ABC News right now. And of course, we are just now learning all of this information. I want to give you an idea of how these things are reported, especially when it comes to a news aspect. You know, as we get information into this newsroom, this is a very fluid and changing situation. So in the next couple of days, it's very likely that you're going to hear numbers and things reported as fact, where that could be changed because of the fluidity of the situation, which is expected to be, it is expected in situations like this. I'm reading some new updates right now that some of these people that were killed include teenagers, parents, and coaches. This is straight from the Associated Press. As we continue on this, the person speaking with the Associated Press is describing these victims as highly talented individuals, saying their loss will resonate through the skating community there. Again, going back through that, the 6 members from the Skating Club of Boston were killed in this plane crash as well. And the CEO is speaking out saying, again, this is going to be impactful there. 2 teenagers, it sounds like, is the situation there. We have also heard from the American Airlines CEO, that is Robert Isom. He issued a statement very quickly after this plane crash happened. We've also been hearing a lot of the information that we will be hearing will be from American Airlines in the future. So let's go ahead and listen to what CEO from American Airlines, Robert Isom, has to say.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Isom, the CEO of American Airlines. I want to brief you on a serious accident that occurred involving an American Eagle aircraft. The aircraft was operated by PSA Airlines, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of American Airlines. First and most importantly, I'd like to express our deep sorrow about these events. This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones. I know that there are many questions, and at this early stage, I'll not be able to answer all of them, but I do want to share the information I have at this time. American Eagle Flight 5342, operated by PSA Airlines, a CRJ-700 aircraft traveling from Wichita, Kansas to Washington Reagan National Airport, has been involved in an accident near Washington, D.C. It appears to have collided with a military aircraft on approach. Flight 5342 was under the command of 4 crew members and carried 60 passengers for a total of 64 people on board. We are actively working with local, state, and federal authorities on emergency response efforts, and the American Airlines Care Team has been activated to assist our passengers and their families. We're cooperating fully with the National Transportation Safety Board in its investigation and will continue to provide all the information we can. Our cooperation is without pause, and we want to learn everything we can about today's events. That work will take time, but anything we can do now, we're doing. And right now, that means focusing on taking care of all passengers and crew involved, as well as their families. Members of our GO team will be on their way to Washington, D.C., and I'll be heading there shortly as well. We know that many people will be concerned for the welfare of their loved ones, and we've set up a special helpline friends and family can call at 1-800-679-8215. That's 1-800-679-8215. If you believe you've had friends or family on board American Eagle Flight 5342. We understand and appreciate that people are eager for information. Please know that we'll continue to share accurate and timely information as soon as we can, but anything we must report must be accurate. We owe that to everyone involved. Our team of highly trained professionals will be working around the clock to support our passengers, crew, and their families however we can, and we'll update you as soon as we can. Thank you.
That was CEO Robert Isom with American Airlines giving us his latest update of what transpired last night at just before 9 o'clock. If you're just joining us, we are doing special coverage here on 13 Plus of what we know in that plane crash that happened near Washington, D.C. A plane, a regional jet, a CRJ-700 from PSA Airlines, a subsidiary of American Airlines, crashed with a Black Hawk helicopter as the helicopter was flying south and the jet was approaching Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport for a landing there. And as you can see by this map, there was a crash at 8:47, and here is some video of that crash again. You can see the blinking light approach the bigger light in the circle that you see there. That is the helicopter on the left, and we have paused the video at the moment of impact because at this point we do know that officials are thinking there are no survivors. That is a death toll approaching 70 at this point. I want to give you some more information as to what the helicopter was doing. We just got some new updated information from ABC News. We now know, and this is straight from the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. He says that the Army helicopter, which had 3 soldiers on board, was on what's called an annual proficiency training flight at the time of the crash. That's straight from the Secretary of Defense in a video message. He says that this was a very experienced crew. They were doing a routine and required annual night evaluation, and they had night vision goggles. ABC News goes on to report that this crash happened on a clear night, and that is what we've heard all morning long, is that officials from both the Transportation Department as well as officials in D.C. and at Reagan National have been reporting that this was on a clear night, and at this point it's being reported that officials are working to determine if this helicopter was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the crash. Again, here's the moment of impact on your screen. And of course, Hegseth ending his remarks with, "This is a tragedy." We also are learning again that several members of the U.S. figure skating crew was on the airplane, the CRJ-700. We know that 6 of them were from the Skating Club of Boston. And the leader of that organization describing this as an unspeakable tragedy. 14 figure skaters were returning home. Let me read this straight from this update. 14 figure skaters returning home from U.S. Figure Skating's National Development Camp in Wichita were on board the plane, according to the CEO of the Skating Club of Boston. Of those 14 skaters, 6 skaters were for the Skating Club of Boston. So that's an important clarification when we're talking about where these folks are from. 6 were from Boston, 14 total figure skaters from the U.S. Figure Skating National Development Camp were on the plane. And again, we can also report 2 coaches and 2 teenage athletes and some athletes' moms were on that plane, according to reporting from ABC News. I'm also looking to find out if there were any new updates, and there is. Just about 2 minutes ago, there's new reporting saying that this helicopter, which there's obviously an investigation happening right now with the FAA. An early focus for investigators is the flight path of this helicopter, which appeared to be flying at about 350 feet, which is above the mandated 200-foot ceiling here, or floor, I should say, according to sources familiar with that operation. So they were flying above the mandated 200 feet. Another focus right now, and something that you may have been hearing about on social media, is the communication between the helicopter and air traffic control. That's been a very big question, and a question that will still continue to be, is that if they were communicating as they should. And again, lots of questions rather than answers right now. What we do know is that the cause of this crash is unclear. At this point, we know that the Transportation Secretary was at a briefing earlier this morning, and he said right now that this was a clear flight. We also know, I'm trying to get some more information here pulled up, but here's a live look for you at the Potomac. You can see the recovery efforts have significantly died down since overnight. Overnight, we had a massive response. More than 300 people were on scene working to recover any survivors, search for any survivors, or recover any bodies. Again, here's that video, and it's the juxtaposition between the live feed and the video that we're looking at right now is just so stark. You see a heavy response, again, 300 responders there searching for the 64 individuals that were on the plane, 3 on the helicopter, looking for any survivors. Earlier this morning, there were reports, when these numbers were first coming out, that about 18 people had been pulled from the water. Again, now we know 28 people are confirmed to have been pulled. And we are still waiting on more numbers as this recovery, now it's shifting to a recovery effort, continues this morning. Wichita officials in Kansas have been briefed. They're going to start notifying family members and giving them the latest information as they get it. We should mention here for Grand Rapids how it impacts us, as there is just one flight to and from DCA that was supposed to take off this afternoon. That has been canceled. Of course, rightfully so, because this is a very serious situation there. At this point, debris. We're hearing about debris that's been found in Washington, D.C. We also know that there is debris found in Maryland and Virginia. That is other reporting from the Associated Press right now. And rescue crews have been working for more than 12 hours now in 36-degree temperatures. We know the wind, we know the temperatures there have been giving them a lot of trouble, of course, rightfully so. So right now we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like rescue boats, at least rescue boats, in the water right now. You see the bigger boats. We're not exactly sure what the bigger boats are for. They appear to be some sort of ferry or larger capacity boat, perhaps maybe to give the relief to some of the first responders and now recovery responders there a little bit of a break when it comes to the elements. Again, they've recovered 28 bodies, and that plane was found in 3 different sections of waist deep water there in the Potomac. Let's get a look at the crash map. This happened around 8:47 This jet was approaching what's called runway 33 to land. This Black Hawk helicopter, as the jet was approaching, was flying south, and you can see the moment of impact there. It's not on this map, but the military base where this helicopter came from is just south of what this map shows. And again, we were hearing from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. He just came out with a video message moments ago that the people on board the helicopter, I think that's really my focus right now, is we've been hearing a lot about the folks that were on the airplane. When we're talking about the helicopter, we haven't really heard much, probably because they were trying to ascertain the situation on the military side of this. But this Army helicopter had 3 soldiers on board. They were doing a training flight for annual proficiency, which I would imagine is probably just checking to see that they were proficient in the different systems and the different aircraft procedures there. And at the time of the crash, they were doing that night training flight. And they did have night vision goggles. The crash happened, like we said, on a clear night. They were above the mandated 200-foot floor that they needed to be above. So there's a 200-foot floor that this helicopter needs to be above in order to operate within its jurisdiction there. So you can see the moment of the impact there. At this point, we're thinking 64 people on board the plane were killed, as well as the 3 individuals on the helicopter, for a total of 67 people who were killed in this crash. You can imagine that DC, it is one of the nation's largest metropolitan areas. We can also probably infer that the airspace was pretty busy at the time that this crash happened. I know that I've been seeing FlightAware data that's shown different planes around this crash impact when it happened. There were planes on approach, planes landing as this crash happened. I would imagine planes diverted and told to go around. I've been seeing reports where that is the case as well. Again, here is a live look at the plane crash site in DC. That's the Potomac River there, where the after the impact of the plane and the helicopter happened, they both ended in the water there. The plane ending up in 3 different sections here. And unfortunately, we are hearing of casualties when it comes to folks who were a part of the U.S. figure skating team community. We do know that a number of those individuals are believed to be dead. Let me get to the latest information from my computer here. We do know now that 33 seconds ago it was issued that President Trump will be speaking at the White House from the briefing room there at 11 in the morning. So here in about an hour, we know the president's going to be speaking. We're going to work to get that for you, the latest information from the president and his reaction to on 13 on your side at noon this afternoon. Let me see if we've got some more information as well. We also know that this in recent history is not the first crash that has happened like this. We know many decades ago a similar crash happened as well. And let me see if I can pull up some information too about that. But we do know that, you know, this scene does give us reminders of that scene many, many years ago. And of course, I'm sure that the NTSB, FAA, and the investigators that are over this scene will be giving us similarities between the 2 scenes as well. So as we close out our half-hour special covering the plane crash that happened in the Washington, D.C. area, we now know that 28 people have been recovered, 28 bodies rather, have been recovered from the Potomac River. 60 passengers, 4 flight crew on the plane feared dead, as well as 3 soldiers on a military Black Hawk helicopter also feared dead. Among the dead are skaters, coaches, and family members in the U.S. figure skating community. Some are from Boston. We know as many as 14 are from that community, from the U.S. figure skating community specifically, are on or were on that plane. That includes anywhere from actual skaters to any coaches that could have been there, and any family members that were with them. We're hearing the latest reports that it was mothers that may have been traveling with the group. We also know that 2 Russian figure skaters, still unconfirmed on who those folks are. And when it comes to U.S. confirmations there, we are working to figure out who exactly those people are. And again, we will learn their identities after officials here make identifications of the victims here, but of course we expect family members to be notified first. So again, thank you so much for joining us for this special here on 13 Plus. We're going to continue to keep you updated on the situation that's happening in Washington, D.C., as well as the ongoing recovery effort that we will be hearing about for sure in the days to come. For everyone here at 13 on Your Side, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Tanner Holbrook.